We have a UFC pay-per-view being moved literally at the last minute here. UFC 232. Moving from Vegas to Los Angeles, an abnormality. In a JonJones test. All the fighters alerted via social media. Everybody who bought tickets for the show.
Nobody was alerted. They found out.
Yes.
Well, there may have been some fighters told, but most fighters were not told anything.
The point of this is nobody was told. If you're a fighter, you gotta get there. If you bought tickets to go to Vegas,
no. Okay, no. Fighters were all going to be headquartered in Vegas, and they were all going to be taken by UFC, whether it's a charter flight. I think they're chartering everyone's flight, so they didn't have to get there on their own. As far as the fans go, all the ticket money is being refunded unless you want to go to Los Angeles, which I'm sure you can exchange tickets and go to Los Angeles. As far as hotels and all that, that's another issue. I guess you can cancel hotels. You could probably cancel flights. Or you could get new ones. I don't know. That's whatever. I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous. There's so much. Okay, I am so ridiculously sick. And this is this is not JonJones. This is UFC, and this is USADA. And I'm tired of people who try, because this is a very complicated issue, and they think they're so smart that they try and say stuff that is complete bullshit. All right. This stuff does not add up. All right. So, and I've heard it now for, since the summer of 2017, one thing after another. If these guys, I have spent my whole life, well, not my whole life, because I didn't do any of this till I was in my 20s, but from my 20s till now, so 36 years or so, I've dealt with dishonest people and con men. So you learn, like when people sometimes, if you hear stories, they'll change over time a little bit. And those people are usually pretty honest. Stories will change a little bit because your memories change. Sometimes people forget stuff, actually very often, especially when you go back decades. And then other people are just dishonest people, and everyone knows people like that. And people like that usually are, some people are they just are. Most of the time it's because they have something to hide, they're insecure, whatever. Okay. So, most, promoters are going to lie, and there are always going to be exceptions, but generally speaking, they will. I don't expect, there's government cover-ups and things like that. All right. But, and some people will be so naive not to see through it. And other times it just stares you right in the face. So the whole thing with John, it's like, I'm not even mad at John at all. Not in the least. This is all on UFC and USADA. Moving a frickin' show. Okay. What is the purpose of that? They were going to do, if they spent a few minutes, I'm sure they spent a few minutes, but it was such a panic thing. If they spent a few minutes, they could, number one, there's things you could do. You could keep the show in Vegas, and you could even book which is, I know this whole thing is ludicrous, but you could book JonJones' fight in Los Angeles. Jim Crockett did it. Vince McMahon did it. McMahon did it in 86. Jim Crockett did it in 85 and 86. It was pretty fucking simple. It's not simple, but they did it with a lot less money than UFC has. I remember I went in 86 to, was it 86 to Greensboro. Half the show was in Greensboro.
So are you talking, basically, just to clear this up for everybody, you're still running the show in Vegas, but having JonJones have his fight in LA.
Right. You could still do that. Okay. And and you can broadcast the fight, on screens into Vegas. So yeah, you're not seeing it live, but you're seeing the rest of the card live. And it's a good card. This is a really good card. The fighters don't get screwed, because all these fighters are getting screwed. Because one of the things that people haven't talked about is the fighters now are out 9 to 13% of their pay because of the difference in taxes. Now, granted, that's the luck of that's why a lot of fighters like to fight in Vegas, and in other states they don't like to. California's got a high tax rate, but the fighters don't deserve to have 9 to 13%. Well, actually, it depends on how much they're going to make for the fight. But generally speaking, it's going to be 9 to 13% off. The higher paid the fighter, the higher the percentage is getting extra taxed because of being in a different city. Not to mention that the fighters all that fly their friends in or family or whatever, they're going to have to rearrange everything for them, which is going to cost them a lot more money. The fans, 15,000 fans or so, whatever the advance was, 15, 17,000 fans, all screwed when you could still do this. And there'd still be complaints, and it's not perfect, but you don't punish the fighters. You don't, for something that they didn't do. You don't make everyone, like 15,000 people plus have to do all this because one guy failed a drug test. Or you could just do the card. This happens all the time. It sucks. We've seen fights fall out. Guys miss weight. You can do the card. Like I said, it's a good card with Chris and Amanda Nunes in the main event. That's a 300,000 buy card. Chris is a draw. Okay. So with Jones and Gustafson, it's bigger. But here's people complaining they're going to lose out because they have to refund whatever it is, a $5 million advance. I don't know if that's the exact number. Maybe it's a little less, but it's in that, a number in that range, plus rent the building, plus fly everyone, to LA from Vegas, and all that. You're talking a big financial hit, and you can just schedule JonJones and Gustafson some other day. I'd prefer they would never do it because when I get to the JonJones stuff, that's a completely different thing. But you can do all this. They didn't even do all this. The other thing, too, is that they withheld this information. Okay, this I don't know what day this information came out. Okay, the test was December 9th. But Friday, they went to the California Commission with this. Today's Sunday. So that's when they first went. So they knew on Friday they were having trouble with Nevada for whatever reason. They couldn't get my gut is, and this could be completely wrong, but my gut is that they would have covered this whole thing up if Nevada would have agreed to let him fight. Nevada did not agree to let him fight. So once they make the move, you have to explain what happened. Okay, so maybe they wouldn't have covered it up, but I don't trust anyone right now because there's too many dishonest things going on. Okay. So JonJones is talking about, it's a test abnormality. Okay, he's 60 picograms of turinabol was in his system in a test on December the 9th. This is 60 picograms. Think about this. When JonJones failed his test on July 28th, 2017, okay, so that's almost a year and a half difference, a little under a year and a half. Remember all that stuff about, John's test is so low, it couldn't have even been helping him. It had to be some mistake. Okay, that test was between 20 and 80 picograms. So you're telling me on a drug that, generally speaking, is going to be, your half-life is 16 hours. The drug's detection time is, generally speaking, if you're really unlucky, 6 weeks. Okay? If you're unlucky, usually much shorter. Okay? So this drug that he tested positive for between 20 and 80 picograms on July 28, 2017 is in his system at the rate of 60 picograms on December 9th, 2018. On October the 11th, let me get my date. Yes, on October 11th, 2017, he had zero. He tested negative. He had nothing in his system. Which is consistent. Okay, and here's the thing, and this is where the deception and the lying starts. And this goes, from Novitzky, who I really wanted to believe in, and I can't. And, Jones's people are going to defend Jones. I mean, that's just the reality. Okay, So Jones passes a test on July 6th and July 7th. Nothing in the system. July 28th, which is, the weekend of his fight with Cormier, he fails the test for turinabol. Now, there's different uses of turinabol. Number one, it's a drug that's, up until a couple of years ago was impossible to detect. It's how it ever got in the United States, why anyone would use it. It was basically the drugs the Russians were using to beat the system. So we got a rich guy probably finding a connection to a drug that beats the system. Unfortunately, it didn't beat the system. Okay. He probably was, whatever. I don't want to say, oh, this is what John did. This is what he was thinking. I don't know. Okay. I mean, I can only presume, but he's got it in his system, and it's in such small doses that it couldn't have even affected his performance in the fight. Okay. One of the reasons that, and this may not be his reason, but let's let this thing play out. One of the reasons that people use turinabol is when they are cutting weight, it allows you to maintain your strength while dropping weight. Okay. Now, Brian, when would JonJones be dropping weight?
He cuts weight.
When would that be?
Before the fight.
The week or two before the fight?
Yeah.
Maybe a couple of weeks before the fight. Okay. So wouldn't you expect him to test positive the week of the fight? I mean, it's like, and everyone's going like, it would be really stupid for him to be doping the week of the fight. Well, if he's an insecure guy and he's in there with a guy with Cormier who's they have a really weird dynamic, to say the least. These guys legitimately hate each other.
Hey, hold on. Before we go any further,
Yes.
I just have to say this. Everyone who ever failed a drug test before USADA was dumb, right? Because you knew when you were being tested.
Well, before you saw it, of course.
Before you saw it, the only reason
you were dumb, you're the dumb or unlucky.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, how many people failed drug tests before USADA? Like a fair amount, right?
Many.
Okay. So like, why in God's name would you ever use the excuse that nobody could be that dumb? We've historically seen so many people that have done this. Why do we all of a sudden presume that nobody would do it now?
Why would? And here's the thing: the penalties now are so high, 2 years, that forget about, like, why would you do it at all? Why would you do it at all? And we see guys left and right popping, because that's the reality. They come from a sport that, these camps and everything like that. There's a lot of people looking for edges, and a lot of people saying that they've got stuff that you won't get caught with. And they're told by these guys, and some of the guys are frauds, and some of the guys are really smart, but the detecting people are a little bit better. They're certainly far from 100%, but guys are getting caught left and right.
Yeah,
okay?
I just don't understand the defense. Like, how could anyone say, well, he couldn't have been doing it because that would be dumb? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Because people do dumb things. We've seen it historically. They've been doing dumb things in terms of drug testing, like, since there's been drug testing. People do dumb things.
Okay.
Like, how is that an excuse? Oh, well, nobody would be that dumb. He couldn't possibly have done it. That would be dumb. Yeah, it was dumb. That's the point.
Okay, that one's held up for how many fighters have been able to fail drug tests, with no excuse for it and nothing, and everyone backs them up and says, I mean, people can go, hey, you backed up Tom Lawler or something like that, which is first of all, it's a completely different situation, obviously. Okay. But
yeah, but you know what? Hold on. It's different, but it's the same. Because when Tom Lawler failed, the amount that he had in his system in terms of picograms was minuscule.
It was 17.
It was 17. And you know what?
It was minuscule.
It didn't matter.
No.
But when it's JonJones, it's like, well, it's so minuscule that clearly it wasn't helping, so we should allow the guy to fight. This is ridiculous.
And also Tom's was off season. And Tom's also, just to make this clear, Tom never failed for steroids. He failed for Austrian, which is a SARM. It's a completely different drug. I mean, But he did, and he got 2 years for a first offense after being clean his entire career. John has a past. John failed for clomiphene. John failed for cocaine, among other things. Cocaine was off season, so he didn't, have a problem. John had a test abnormality in the first Cormier fight, which we talked about forever, which everyone seems to forget. But, it was nothing that, based on the laws or how you evaluate tests for punishment, you could not get him for. Okay. But there were some very weird readings on his test in the first Cormier fight. Essentially, his testosterone was so low, he shouldn't have been able to get out of bed, yet he could perform at this level. He's a freaking miracle. Okay. But it is consistent with a guy who, would have, had his system real low because it was on an artificial high before. I'm not saying he did it. He passed every test based on the rules, the way that they are, and that's all you can do. You can be suspicious. And I was suspicious. I was suspicious as hell. And now, with the benefit of the rest of this evidence, I'm probably a lot more suspicious. And I'm feeling sort of vindicated with my original thoughts. Okay, so John, he passes those tests a couple weeks before the fight, fails the test the weekend of the fight. Okay, then there's a blood test the week of the fight. Now, keep in mind that blood tests, they were not testing for steroids. It was testing for growth hormone. They're testing for other drugs, not for steroids. Okay, he passes the blood test. His people start telling all the reporters. Remember this story? I know you remember this story about this. Look, he passed his blood test, so therefore, and it's like, that was like totally misleading. I saw that in the minute I read that story. It's like, wait a minute, this is a blood test. You don't test for steroids in a blood test. You test for growth hormone in a blood test. So passing a blood test is absolutely irrelevant when you failed for steroids. But so they're trying to mislead everybody. And once you start doing that, and people fell for it because, unfortunately, there's a tremendous amount of naivete between the commissions and reporters and fans and everything like this in the subject. I had to learn because I had to deal with it with wrestling people who were, basically equally as dishonest on the subject decades ago. So I freaking researched this like to death in the 90s. And, things changed. I wasn't 100% up to speed by my 90s research in 2017. It's decades later. But I knew the cons. And, it wasn't hard to start catching up. Okay. But I knew that immediately. Okay. So they're trying to put out a story that is an irrelevant lie to fool everyone, okay? That's not what honest people do. October 11th, 2017. This is important. JonJones takes a urine test. He passes that, okay? So because of that, they go, look, he passed the test. Look, he passed the test. That first test, how could he be doing it because he passed the test? Well, this frickin' drug is only in your system maybe 6 weeks max, okay? October 11th is, 6 weeks after. So that's about when you would start passing the test, October the 11th. So no, he passes the test October 11th, 2017, okay? Then I don't believe he's tested again until August 2018. Why would a guy who is under suspension and has failed 2 drug tests and is one of the 3 biggest stars in the sport, when you're suspended, you were supposed to be tested more than unsuspended guys because there's that reason of, that feeling that, hey, you failed. So they did not test this guy until August 2018, when he probably should have been tested every month. As considering double offender and big star. Okay, never tested. This is on USADA. This is not on JonJones. This is not on UFC either. Although there's plenty to say with UFC. Okay, why would this happen? Okay, so then they shame him, and it comes out. Daniel Cormier has been tested 11 times. He's never failed a test in his life since being tested, since being tested as a college athlete. He's almost, now Daniel Cormier is 39 years old. He's been tested regularly between college sports, the Olympics, 2 Olympic cycles, national team, blah, blah, blah. Then comes into MMA and, he's in a drug-tested sport there. Never failed to test. He's tested like 11 times last year or up until whatever it was, August last year. JonJones is, now granted, Daniel Cormier did have 2 fights and he should have been tested a lot. Okay. JonJones, but still JonJones should have been tested more because he's a big star on suspension, not tested at all. Now he's got to fight, whatever. He's been tested 9 times before December the 6th, okay? And he passed every one of those tests. December the 6th, he fails a test for 60 picograms, okay? He was only 20 to 80, 18 or 17, whatever it is, 17 months earlier. He passes the test at 60. They say it's an abnormality. They say it's residue from the previous usage in 2017. All those past tests, 10 past tests in between. Okay? And when does he fail the test? At the time he's going to start losing weight. And why would you, and what does that tell you? The same thing as before. He's starting to lose weight. Maybe he's insecure. Maybe whatever. I don't know what makes a guy do this stuff. I mean, when you're at that level and everyone wants to see you fail, you get pretty insecure. Not everyone wants to see you fail, but the world is, look, every guy at that level, and it's not just John, it's the good guys, the bad guys, and the in-between guys. There's people out there and they're wanting to see you fail because you're a star and you don't want to, you really don't want to fail. And you're going against a badass dude, who nearly beat you the last time. And, maybe you're more talented than him. You're getting a little older. He's getting a little older. He's more talented than he was before. Maybe you're better off because you've rested, but you don't know that. Again, I'm not in John's brain. I don't know the motivation. I only know the facts of the case. Okay? So this happens, and everyone's coming up with an excuse that holds, you hear all these scientists and all this. The same people who were saying this thing can stay in your systems for 6 weeks are now saying 17 months later, all these clean tests in between, that it's from that original sample. It's a minor number, yet it's the same fucking number as 17 months earlier, okay? Or in the same range. It's not this minor number, okay? So anyone, I know everyone listening to this knows the gist of the story, but anyway, that's connecting all the dots. And, it's from there, everyone's going to come up with their excuses, and it really bothers me. Let the sport go on. Instead, you're going to you're screwing with 15,000 people because of this one guy, and you're covering for him. Why would you cover for him? He's a star. He ain't that big a star. It's a couple of $1 million that he's going to generate for you. But, you're spending nearly as much as he's going to generate for you to make all these changes. Okay, yeah, you promised a fight. Well, fights fall through. Everyone gets that. People are going to be real unhappy. So now you got no trust. None of your fighters believe you, nor should they. Okay? Some of the fighters are going to figure out my timeline, and others just are around guys and they live in a world. Geez, I lived in that world, where I was training with all the Olympic athletes in the 80s. And, I didn't know, you hear and you know what's going on, okay? You know what's going on. And these guys know what's going on. They're in a gym and most of these guys are pretty street smart because that's the world you live in. And they know. And you hear what the fighters are saying. Nobody is buying this. I mean, nobody is buying this. So why do you try to, like, you know, ruin the organization's credibility, USADA's credibility, which just really got shot by not testing him and really got shot by cutting his suspension to 15 months with no reason whatsoever while throwing the book at other people. Second offense. I mean, you know, even first offense, you'd have to get 2 years for what he did. There's no way around it. He had no excuse. They gave him time. I'm sure that he was searching high and low for a supplement that's got this shit in it. You know he was. He couldn't find it, okay? Because it doesn't exist. How many guys, okay, at least with Ostrine or with Glenbuterol. I mean, here's the thing. These commissions threw the book at Canelo for Glenbuterol, and anyone who knows the first thing knows that Mexican meat and Chinese meat is contaminated, can be contaminated with Glenbuterol. He was in Guadalajara eating steak. Yes, that is how he failed his test. Now, was Canelo always clean? I have no idea. Okay, I know there's always been rumors about anyone who's successful, and in a lot of cases, those rumors are correct. But the point is that Canelo never should have gotten any time whatsoever. But the commissions, because they're so naive and they don't understand a basic fact like that, you know, they moved his fight. Canelo, who's, you know, a bigger star than John. But with John, they're listening to this complete bullshit, and the fight's going to happen. And California, no less, you know, where, you know, which is the same state where Andy Foster was. I just believe him. You know, it's like he didn't even come up with a freaking fake supplement defense. Well, he tried, couldn't find one, didn't have an excuse, whatever. And you're gonna, okay, if you didn't have even if you didn't have all those past tests in between, it's still bullshit. But you have all those past tests in between. I mean, how do you make yourself look so naive? And what's it worth? And California's reeling right now. They just sanctioned Liddell. That fight had no business happening. You could just watch that guy in practice, and it's like it was criminal to allow that guy to fight. Absolute criminal. He could not move. He could not defend himself. You put a 49-year-old man who could not defend himself in a fight. Okay, granted, okay, they did suspend him. He's never going to fight again, probably, you know, for sure. He's not going to fight again because of that. But, you know, someone should have stepped in. That fight was, like, when he got out of his car and I saw he could barely walk. He's walking like Mick Foley, you know, into the building. It's like, what's this guy doing fighting? When you saw the footage of him sparring, you go like, this is like a 70-year-old man, the way he moves. This guy can't fight. They let the fight happen. Okay, so you just had that. Okay, it's a mistake. I think they all know it's a mistake. You know, but then you do this, like weeks later, you do this. You know, and you know, I've heard people say that Nevada, if they had enough commissioners there or whatever, you know, they might have, you know, and it wasn't a holiday weekend and this and this and this, they might have approved it. Well, they didn't, but how could they have? How could you possibly do it? So anyway, that's the science behind it. Now, as far as like the other stuff, you know, like all these people getting, you know, I mean, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just really, I just find the whole situation completely ridiculous. I've seen, you know, one person after another in this chain try to lie to people on stuff because they think people are stupid. Okay? And I'm sick of watching this and having these things that make absolutely no sense happen because they think they can pull the wool over your eyes. And, you know, that's the situation.
So there you go. Show's been moved, and fights going on, and fighters are mad. They're tweeting about it. They're upset. But screw you. Doesn't matter.
Corey Anderson talked about all the fighters just saying we're not going to fight.
They are.
Of course they will. They could. You know what? They could do that. They could go do that. I almost think that they should. Normally, I'm not like in favor of something like that, but at this point, I almost think they should. They should just go in there and just go, look, let them do. You can go do your one match show. I mean, they won't stick together. That's the problem. But honestly, that's what they should do. They should just do that.
The thing is that it doesn't really. I mean, whatever they're going to do with JonJones to protect JonJones for whatever reason they want to protect JonJones. I mean,
what reason could there be?
I don't know, but I mean, the point of this is like, I used to go to UFCs regularly. Had a hell of a time. It was a lot of fun. Always enjoyed myself for the most part. But I mean, dude, like, if I were a fan, if this were not my job and I was just a fan, like, I'm over this. I mean, I absolutely positively would never buy a ticket outside of my state ever again. There's no way I'm flying to Vegas for a show. I mean, they're gonna move a show with a week's notice. I mean, are you kidding me? I was talking earlier about the fighters having
but here's the thing.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Thing we were talking about with the fighters, and you said like the fighters have a charter. Like, who cares about that? What about their families that they're bringing along?
Exactly.
And everything. And it's Christmas. I mean, how many people do you think going to this show? I mean, there's got to be a fair percentage that like this was a Christmas gift to somebody. And now,
or was there New Year's weekend?
New Year's weekend, whatever. I mean, you're fucked.
I mean, the whole reason they always run Vegas this weekend is because people go to Vegas for New Year's and they see a UFC. That's why it was booked there in the first place.
Yeah. So my point is like whatever the JonJones thing is, whatever the JonJones thing is, but to me the bigger issue is just screwing these fans, who paid God only knows how much for the tickets. And for the travel and the hotels and everything else that goes along with going to a trip. I mean, that's 15,000 people you just fucked.
Exactly.
And I mean, yeah, maybe you'll make a little extra money because he's still fighting on the card. But there's the long-term issue of screwing your fans.
Well, it's more than just screwing the fans. It's the way it looks to the public. I think California Commission looks really bad.
Yeah, but you got to think about this, Dave. Like, a lot of fans, they don't give a shit about a lot of that. But they do give a shit that they booked a trip, and a week before, they just moved the show for a guy.
For a guy. Like, if there was a reason...
There's main events that fall through all the time.
If there was like a reason in other ways where they had no choice... But, they could have still kept the show. They could have still kept the show in Vegas.
Yes, that's the point. Like, if you're a fan, okay? If you're a fan in 2018, all right? I know, everyone knows, when you buy your ticket 3 months in advance, like whatever the hell the show is, whatever the planned card is, like don't buy a ticket expecting to see that show. There's going to be people injured, there are going to be replacements, but you know what? At the end of the day, there's going to be a damn show.
Yeah.
They moved the show.
They could have put 12 matches on that show and done one match in the other state.
Yeah, but even that, it's like, why bother? Just take the guy off the show.
Oh, I know. I
That's it.
No, but it would save the pay-per-view. But you know what? They had no right to. He shouldn't be fighting. So that's bullshit.
But hold on. You say save the pay-per-view, but like, if I bought a ticket because I want to see Jones and Gustafson, okay, and this Jones has an irregular drug test or however they're phrasing it, and like I fly my ass down there to see this, and it's like I'm watching it on the big screen. Because they took the guy to L.A. to fight there. I'm still going to be pissed off.
Okay, but that's different. Okay, because the reality on that is that you would still get a show and you have the option to get a refund. So that's if there was no option for a refund, that would be a completely different thing. But there is an option for a refund, and they're going to be refunding everyone's ticket money. Now, granted, I know they were all going to fly in, but if you still give them a show, look. Jones could have got hurt in training. Gustafson could have got hurt in training. That stuff happens all the time. So that's part of the deal. But they did not have to move the show. I mean, even to save this bullshit of saving the JonJones fight, they still didn't even have to move the show. They could have just done it that way, and at least you get a show. So you got to watch one fight on the big screen that wasn't going to happen, that shouldn't happen anyway. And if you don't like it, you can get a refund. That happens all the time. There's a law in Vegas that if the main event that is advertised doesn't happen, they have to refund your ticket. That's the best you can do. So it's like, it sucks, but it's the realities of life in the UFC and all combat sports and, pro wrestling and anything. Guys can break their leg. That's all part of life. Okay. But this one, they screwed fans for no reason. Forget about the John story is another story. The screwing the fans is just was it no thought? I mean, what made them come up with this decision? The only thing I can think of is literally they didn't think. You can do a split show. It's been done. It's been done before. Boxing does it. How many times do I watch a boxing TV show where, okay, it's not a pay-per-view, but I don't know if they've ever done a split pay-per-view. I've seen pro wrestling split pay-per-views, but I've seen boxing split TV shows where I'm watching, a couple of fights from this location, and I watch a couple of fights from this location. It's on the same show. It's not even unusual. They couldn't think of it. Through all this. That's a different level. That's a different level of incompetence that I don't get. The fact that they would do it, even if they didn't think, but the fact that they would do this, that's a level that I just can't believe.